Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training we are going to be going over the remote wellness practice foundations, getting your name, your domain, your email, and your logo set up so that way you can go ahead and proceed with version 1.0 of your remote wellness practice launch. Why is this training important? Because we're continuing our theme of launching your remote wellness practice and completing the final trainings for you to go out there and get your remote wellness certification. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop right into this specific training and talk about the 4 foundations of your remote wellness practice. Okay, so we're going to be starting off this module with a bang by really going ahead and putting in place the 4 key foundational elements for you to go ahead and launch your remote wellness practice. Remember, this is the soft launch, the version 1.0 launch with the basic fundamentals and foundations. And so those 4 foundational pieces are going to be naming your remote wellness practice, getting your domain acquired. Number 3 is going to be getting your email situation situated, okay? And then number 4 is all going to be about getting your basic foundational logo in place, okay? So those are going to be the 4 foundational elements that we're going to go ahead and walk through step by step inside of this specific training. Now, the question you might have is, okay, well, why are these 4 connected? The reason why these 4 are grouped together inside of this training is because there are 4 foundational pieces that most beginner and amateur income earners spend the most amount of time stressing about when actually getting started. And the funny thing about that, the fact that they actually stress so much about these things, is that these 4 things, along with your website, which is another step that we're going to get to later on inside of this module, these 4 things plus your website are actually the activities that pretty much matter the least when getting started. Now, is there a time and place to really nail down a good brand name, a good domain, a good email setup, and a good logo and a good website? Yes, right? That kind of happens, when you're doing at least $1 million a year, you're really looking to take it to the next level and really improve your branding. I even know people inside of the industry who are in different mastermind groups with us who are doing 10, 20, $30 million and have terrible, brand names, domains, email setups, and logos and websites, okay? And so the real key thing that I want to go ahead and emphasize is that before that point, before you are at the point where you need to actually level up your branding, right? Stressing out about these things like, my name of my remote wellness practice, the name of my brand is, not the way that it should be. Oh, my domain isn't exactly perfect. We're going to go over examples of companies that you know of that actually don't have the domain that they want, right? Or, hey, my logo isn't the way that I want it to be, or my website isn't the way that I want it to be. I'm telling you right now, spending a lot of time stressing about any one of those things is an absolute waste of time. In the beginning, when getting started, it's really all about getting traction, getting momentum, and really focusing on the minimum viable product and the minimum viable marketing. We talked about this in the past. It's all about focusing on those things in order to get off the ground. And so I want to go ahead and emphasize that from the very beginning. And so I would urge you to choose not to become a failure uniform student who stresses over the things that are not important. Okay, this is very important. And the reason why we deliberately use the word choosing is because it is absolutely a choice whether or not you decide to wear the failure uniform. Being a student who engages in the doom and the gloom, the whining and the complaining, right? Being in the limbic mental drama in which your mind is telling you that the world is ending, right? Overthinking and not actually taking action to where it is that you need to go, versus those students who are winner students, who choose to wear the winning uniform, who really engage in the actions and the solutions, who are actively engaging in consciously clean thinking about their problem. They're zooming into the trenches and they're zooming out and looking at things from afar, right? That is what you want to go ahead and focus on, okay? And so I would urge you not to be a student who chooses to wear the failure uniform and stress out about things that are not important. Why? Because every single student who I know who wears the failure uniform spends an insane amount of time stressing about their name and their domain and their logo and their website, and they don't ever actually make progress towards making an income for themselves and helping transform the lives of others. They don't actually make progress in solving a problem and adding value to the marketplace, and they're stressing about the things that actually don't matter. This is the most common issue that happens with beginners and amateurs and newbies. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't stress out about those things. In the beginning, it's natural. You're a beginner. You really don't know where to put your focus and your emphasis. You think this is important when it's not actually important. Well, guess what? That's why you're inside of a coaching program. That's why you're inside of a program that provides you mentorship. So that way you know that it is not serving you to actually focus on those things, so that way you don't get stuck, right? So there's no problem with being a beginner and an amateur and misdiagnosing and thinking that you should spend more time on this. The issue, and when you actually become a failure uniform student, is when you actually let that stop you and you let the overthinking and the overcomplicating actually stop you, okay? That's when you actually start wearing the failure uniform. And so these are going to be the two quotes that you are going to hear us repeating to you over and over and over again throughout these trainings. Number one, do not major in the minors. And number two, keep the main thing the main thing. What are some of the main things right now? Number one, making sure you have the solid foundations in place, making sure that you are emphasizing your becoming journal. Your becoming journal is going to be your key in order for you to become the version of yourself that is able to create your life that you want effortlessly, okay? The paradigm and the worldview, okay? And then 3 and 4 is all about generating strategy sessions and doing strategy sessions, okay? Ultimately, what you're going to notice as you get through phase number 1 and get on to phase number 2, these are the 4 things that are actually going to matter. And so the main thing is a combination of action, momentum, getting stuff done, actually transforming lives, adding value, making an impact, and making an income for yourself. And so anything that is not that is not the main thing. And so you always want to remember to keep the main thing the main thing. And so focusing on your logo and doing admin work and, changing your website and worrying about all these small things is not the main thing. This is so absolutely important for us to go ahead and make clear as we go ahead and talk about these foundations, okay? From there, I want to go ahead and talk to you quickly about whether or not any of these 4 things, your name, your domain, your email, and your logo, whether or not any of them are tied or connected to your legal entity, right? So the question that comes up is like, hey, does my remote wellness practice name, domain, email, logo, website, does any of that have to do with the legal entity, the LLC, the corporation that I register with my state or with my country, right? Or you know what? On top of that, I'm not even sure what the heck the legal entity does. Like what happens with that? Now, I want to make this clear. There's going to be an entire training later on inside of this module in which we are going to go over the foundations of what you need to know from a finance, legal, and accounting perspective, okay? And then on top of that, there's actually going to be an entire module later on inside of this program where we are actually going to go deep on topics like tax planning, bookkeeping, write-offs, corporate structure, financial reports, and every other single topic related to accounting, legal, and finance, okay? There's literally an entire module. I'm talking about multiple trainings that are all about the game of accounting, legal, and finance, okay? But for right now, what I want to go ahead and make clear, just so that way you have just enough that is important for you to know, is that your brand and your legal entity, for the most part, are 2 separate things. In your mind, especially for you as a beginner really starting to get started with this entire process, is I want you to keep in mind that for the most part, these are 2 separate things, okay? So you have your brand name, your marketing, your domain, your emails, your logo, all of that kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with the legal name, the legal entity that you have registered with the state and the forms that you filled out and the entity type. All of that is mainly for like tax filing purposes, right? Filings and forms and accounting and bookkeeping, all of that is separate, okay? And so don't overcomplicate this in your mind. You want to think of these things as 2 separate things. And so don't be like asking questions like, oh, does my domain name have to be registered with the state? That's not a question. Like, that's not something that is like applicable. That's a question that a beginner would ask because they don't understand this mental framework. And so that's why I'm explaining this mental framework for you, so that way you can properly understand where these questions are and how these pieces all come together. Okay. So that's another very important point that I did want to go ahead and make before we actually get into the training of setting up your name, domain, email, and logo. The other point that I want to go ahead and make as we go ahead and dive into this is that please do not be a know-it-all student. okay? As we go through these trainings to set up your name, domain, email, and logo. For some students, this is going to be easier than others, okay? In our previous education programs, what we did is we made the mistake of assuming that students already knew the foundational knowledge around technology and setting these things up. And then we were just absolutely shocked when students were still using AOL and Hotmail and trying to run, their entire online business off of their phone, right? And we were just absolutely shocked by this. And so that's why when we decided to rebuild the entire program that you are going through from the ground up, we are making it a point to actually go into the details and the foundations, so that way we are leaving no stone unturned. We're making sure that anyone, regardless of their age, their tech ability, their budget, or anything like that, can get this stuff up and running, and that there's no reason why anybody would be unable to do it, okay? And so while some of the foundational topics that we go over inside of these trainings might sound simple for some students, that is not always the case for all the students, okay? So I guarantee you that no matter how advanced you think you are, you will absolutely learn something from this training in setting things up, okay? And so please do not be a know-it-all student who says, yeah, let me just skip ahead, okay? That is why there is a 1.5x, 2x, 2.5x even playback speed setting on these trainings, so that way you can actually go through the trainings faster or slower depending on how you need to go through them, okay? Just make sure that you never actually skip. You never want to do that, because that is a big no-no. You want to make sure that you are actually going through the trainings, but you can change the speed at which you go through them if you need to do so. And so with those introductory points covered, let's go ahead and dive right in and talk about setting up your foundational pieces for your remote wellness practice launch. And the very first thing that we're going to go ahead and go over right now is your remote wellness practice name, and actually picking and choosing a name for your remote wellness practice. Now, naming your remote wellness practice is honestly probably the number one thing that most amateur, newbie, beginners overcomplicate and make extremely difficult for themselves. Now, I want to go ahead and reassure you, it's normal and it's natural to want to think extremely deep about this. Yes, that's fine, okay? But there is a fine line between being an amateur, newbie, beginner versus being a failure uniform student. And what is that fine line? The answer is overcomplicating it to the point where it stops you from making forward progress. Because when you start to overcomplicate it to the point where it stops your momentum, congratulations. That is when you have stepped over the line from being just an amateur newbie beginner, which again, it's fine. I've said this before. It's fine to be a newbie amateur beginner. We all started somewhere. We all were not just born knowing this stuff. Being a beginner is awesome. I love being a beginner at things, okay? Because it's exciting, you're learning so much, right? However, when you start to use that overcomplicatedness, that overthinkingness, and it stops your momentum, okay? That is when you have crossed the line into becoming a student who is now wearing the failure uniform. So when we talk about naming your remote wellness practice, sure, spend a day or two thinking about it, no problem. But spending more than a week thinking about it, when you have zero money coming in to your remote wellness practice, when you have zero active students or clients, when you have no momentum, and now all of a sudden you've just gone ahead and spent all of this time trying to think about how to find the perfect name, which actually doesn't exist. Well, guess what? That is how you just end up becoming a student who wears the failure uniform, okay? And so any single moment, any single minute that you spend wasting on coming up with your name when you have no momentum, I'm sorry to say, but that's just being silly. All right. And so I did want to just go ahead and give that big warning as we talk about being able to come up with the name for your remote wellness practice. Okay. And so let's go ahead and talk about it. The approaches to picking a name without overcomplicating. Okay. So there are two main approaches to building your brand name. Okay. The first approach is called your personal brand, and the second is called your organization brand. Okay. These are two major approaches that exist out there. They're the two main approaches. Okay. So your personal brand is basically when you go ahead and use your name as your brand name, right? So let's say, for example, my name is John Doe. I'm like, hey, John Doe Wellness, that is my name, okay? And so that's going to be the name of my personal brand, and that's going to be the name of my organization, John Doe Wellness, okay? The pros is that, yes, it's easier for people to build a relationship with a person that has a face. The con is that as you scale, everything is still about you. And then the other approach is the organization brand. And this is when you make the organization your brand, right? And what it does is it allows you to be able to separate yourself from the organization and really build a team. That's the pro of it. So you can think of like Remote Wellness Academy, right? That's an organization brand. Versus the cons of it is that it's more difficult for people to build a relationship with a faceless organization. And so it really is pros and cons, right? There is no necessarily right or wrong answer here. Personally, we have always leaned more towards the organization brand approach because it allowed us to be able to lean on the team and the organization rather than trying to portray ourselves or just one person who was maybe the founder of the organization who had all the answers, right? And so it also allows us, when we have an organization brand, to really lean on like, hey, we designed this. We are working towards this rather than I, and all the spotlight is specifically on you, okay? And then on top of that, when you go with the organization brand approach, what you're doing is you're leaning more on Remote Wellness Academy, right? We're behind you as your mentors, as your coaches throughout this process. In many ways, we as RWA are a part of your organization as well. You're using our model, our process, our system. And so therefore, when you go ahead and say we have been doing this for X amount of time. Hey, we have perfected this process, right? We are a part behind you as Remote Wellness Academy. And so for these reasons, we actually prefer the organization brand when starting out, even though there are some cons to it, okay? And so this is going to be our recommendation for you as well as you start to be able to put the name for your remote wellness practice together. Now, in terms of actually picking the name, we want to go ahead and kind of give you some examples of how to actually pick the name, okay? Now, ultimately, this is going to be up to you and your creativity, okay? It is going to be different for everyone. Some examples of kind of templates that you can utilize is maybe having like a cool word that really resonates with you, Wellness Academy, right? Elite Wellness Academy, NutriFit Wellness, having the word wellness in there, having the word coaching in there, another cool word that you like, another cool word that you make up, right? Ultimately, it does not make a difference. Remember, it's not going to necessarily push the needle forward, okay? It's ultimately up to you, but it's also completely up to you what route you want to go. And just to kind of give you some examples here, right? Typically, we have come up with 3 words. I don't know why this ended up being the case. Do not go out there and say, oh, hey, Coach Yasin said I got to have 3 words in my name. I'm just telling you what has worked for us, and I'm telling you what has, kind of stuck with us, is that we have, for some odd reason, ended up with kind of like 3 words, which made making abbreviations easier, right? So like NutriFit Wellness, NFW, Online Fit Pro, OFP, Remote Wellness Academy, RWA. Again, you do not necessarily have to do that. I'm just telling you what has ended up happening from our experience. But remember, do not overcomplicate this, okay? Unfortunately, I have seen way too many students who end up putting on the failure uniform and end up almost in tears because they are unable to choose a name for their remote wellness practice. I'm telling you, ultimately, this is absolutely ridiculous. Remember, you can always change your name later. And it's really easy to do that, okay? And especially when you're just getting started out, it doesn't matter, okay? Like maybe if you were doing like $1 billion a year and you're like, okay, you know what? I got to start, thinking about my brand name a little bit more strategically because this is not a decision that I can just come back from. But if you're making $0 and you have like, a handful of clients or you got like, 5 or 10 students in your program and you want to change your name, it's not going to be the end of the world, okay? So it's very easy to do that. And so what I would urge you to do is set a deadline for yourself, nothing more than a week. I'm telling you right now, whatever you come up with by that deadline, pick it and move forward, period, okay? Please do not make us call you out for wearing the failure uniform about this. Do not wear the failure uniform and overcomplicate this and really overthink this and all of that kind of stuff, okay? So make sure that you are staying in momentum, pick a deadline, pick the best name that you come up by that deadline, and then go ahead and run with it. Having said that, the other question that does come up at this point that students will sometimes ask is, does this name that I pick have to be the same name that I have registered for my corporation? No, because remember, we talked about this, is that we have your brand, and then you have your legal name, okay? And so the name that you have registered, the legal name that you have registered with the state can absolutely be something different, okay? Your LLC or corporation legal name, right, the company that you register with the state, can have a completely different name than you choose for your brand. Because every single state or country has something called doing business as, a DBA, okay? And some states call it a fictitious name, okay? So it can be basically whatever you want it to be, right? And so whenever you have a DBA, maybe your legal name on record, the legal corporate name is like, hey, this is John Doe Consulting LLC. But then you decide that you want to have your DBA be John Doe Wellness. you can do that, okay? And so, for example, Remote Wellness Academy is our company's DBA, okay? But our LLC that is registered in the state of Texas is a completely different name, okay? And so don't worry, we will be going over all of the financial, legal, and accounting foundations in an upcoming training inside of this module. But I just want you to know that at this stage, none of what we are doing has any importance to the legal, accounting, or finance side of the business, okay? And as you're gonna see later on, as you start to be able to increase your knowledge about how all of this works, the crazy thing is that beginners and amateurs, and unfortunately students who wear the failure uniform, think that they got to do all of this stuff before they can have a business. The truth is that legally, you do not even have to have a registered business in order for you to start having clients and students. You can start collecting an income from customers without even needing a registered business. It's completely legal, okay? And so having a registered business only saves you on taxes. But here's the thing, when you're making like less than $5,000 a month, right, inside of your remote wellness practice, a lot of times that doesn't even matter, because like 30% tax versus 40% tax, okay, on $0 is still $0, okay? And so don't let that be an obstacle, because in your mind, you think that you have to go out and quote unquote register your business to quote unquote make an income, when none of that is true. And so again, we're going to be talking more about this in the finance, legal, and accounting foundations training that's going to be up and coming inside of this specific module. But I did just want to go ahead and talk about that right now, because I cannot tell you how much misinformation a lot of beginner, newbie, amateurs have when they are starting this process, and they overcomplicate this and adds to their overthinking, when I just want to go ahead and simplify it for you, so that way it is extremely straightforward for you as you are going through this process. Okay, so ultimately what you want to go ahead and do is you want to go ahead, and it is going to be an action step for you inside of this training. You are not going to be able to proceed unless you actually go ahead and pick a name for your remote wellness practice. We are going to be holding you accountable for that. It is going to be an action step underneath this specific training. So you want to go ahead and make sure that you do go ahead and pick a name for your remote wellness practice. All right, beautiful. Now, having said that, the next thing that we're going to go ahead and talk about is acquiring a domain name for your remote wellness practice, right? So we've gone ahead and talked all about naming your remote wellness practice. Now it's time to go ahead and talk about the domain name. Let's go ahead and talk about that right now. Remote wellness practice and the domain name, okay? So welcome to the second thing that most amateur, newbies, and beginners overcomplicate and make difficult for themselves, okay? So before we actually talk about picking your domain name, before we talk about acquiring your domain name, let's go over some fundamentals and foundations, okay? The first question I have for you is, what the heck is a domain name? So a domain name is a unique address that people type into their internet browser in order to go to a page on the internet. So again, this might seem extremely simple for some of you, but we want to make sure that we are covering the fundamentals and the foundations, okay? So like we said, examples of domain names are like google.com or facebook.com, okay? Now, the other question that you might have is, well, what are all of the parts of a domain name? What is the anatomy of a domain name, right? And so, like I said, one of our goals here at Remote Wellness Academy is to make sure that you guys as RWA students are not only educated on what you need to do in order to create a successful remote wellness practice, but also why. And so for that reason, we're going to go ahead and touch very quickly on some foundational tech knowledge that is going to be helpful for you as an online income earner, because that's what you have to always keep in mind. The reason why it's always good for you to take that next step of understanding the tech side of things is because ultimately you are a remote income earner. You are an online income earner, right? And so that's why it's going to be important for you to understand the foundational aspects of that as well. And so this is a very cool graphic that our product development team went ahead and put together for you guys as RWA students that basically breaks down what we call the anatomy of a domain name. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that right now. So what people call a domain name is like, hey, remotewellnessacademy.com, right? That's colloquially, that's kind of like in slang what we refer to as the domain name. However, that is actually made up of two parts. There's the actual domain, and then there's the actual extension after the domain, okay? And so altogether, this is what they refer to as the domain name. Now, there are many different types of extensions, things like .net, .org, .us, many different types of other extensions as well, okay? However, that is not the only piece of the anatomy of the domain name or the URL, because the other pieces of this is that there's something called a transfer protocol that is pretty much standard on everything. You don't really need to know the details of it. Just know that the HTTP, the HTTPS is called the transfer protocol. Again, you don't have to remember that. And then there's the subdomain, which is www. So some domain names will have www if they set it up properly that way, or they might not have a subdomain like that. So if I created, for example, training.remotewellnessacademy.com or, domains.google.com. So domains.google.com, that's the subdomain, and then google.com is the actual domain name, right? And then whenever there's a slash, that's basically referring to what is the directory, or kind of, you can imagine like the page within a page or the folder within the folder of the actual domain. So the slash is referring to the directory that is inside of the domain name, okay? And then all together, all of these pieces together is what is known as the URL, okay? And so this is what the anatomy of a domain name looks like, that is important for you to be familiar with in terms of just foundations and fundamentals around tech for you as a remote online income earner. Now, having said that, the next question that will come up is, okay, now that I understand the anatomy of a domain and a domain name, well, how do I actually go about registering a domain name? Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about that right now, about registering a domain name. So because a domain is a pretty much like a unique address, right? You can kind of think about it like your shipping address, your home address, right? It's a unique address on the internet, okay? So it's kind of like real estate property, okay? And so just like you have to register an address in order for you to be able to get mail and packages and all that kind of stuff, you have to do the same with a domain name, okay? So you have to register, or you have to purchase that piece of real estate on the internet, okay? And so you do this by using what is known as a domain name registrar service, okay? So you have to register your domain name. You have to basically purchase the real estate, purchase the house on the internet, and that is your domain name, okay? And so what you do is you go ahead and utilize these services called domain name registrars. Now, there are hundreds and I think pretty much thousands of domain registrars out on the internet that will basically help you register your domain, okay? So you basically purchase that property on the internet, okay? Now, some examples of these common domain registrars include websites like GoDaddy.com, Namecheap.com, Google Domains, Cloudflare. All of these are different services that these companies provide, and probably the most common one is GoDaddy. A lot of people know that one, but that's just one of the many that are out there, okay? GoDaddy has its pros and cons. Personally, I don't prefer to use them, and we are not going to be using them or recommending them for this program, but you understand that they are one of the domain registrars out there, okay? Does it really matter which one you pick? Not really. Like I said, there are pros and cons to all of them, okay? And there also is a way to be able to transfer domains between registrars. So for example, let's say I went in and I purchased my real estate on the internet, aka my domain, with GoDaddy, right? That was a registrar that I had my domain registered with. Well, there is a process that you can actually have it transferred to Google Domains. So you can go ahead and have it transferred to a different entity that is going to go ahead and be your registrar. Okay, let's say, for example, you liked Google Domains a little bit better, right? So there is ways to do that as well. Now, our recommendation, if you are registering a domain name for the first time, or if there is any domain name going forward that you ever purchase, ever into the future, our recommendation is to go ahead and use Google Domains in order to do that. It's the easiest, it's the fastest, it's the cheapest. It basically includes also identity protection without any additional cost. It's the most straightforward. And it also allows you to easily set up your email and your website and all of that kind of stuff very, very, very easily. Okay. And so because of this recommendation, all of the training examples and all of the mini trainings and the step-by-step that you are going to see throughout this entire program, as you probably already noticed, the theme is that they do revolve around Google Drive and Gmail and all that kind of stuff. And so all of the tutorials inside of this program are going to be around Google Domains. Okay, now, if you have already registered the domain name that you want to use for your remote wellness practice with a different registrar other than Google Domains, okay, we will have a section to talk more about that in just a moment. But for the most part, I would say 99+% of RWA students, because you have not actually gone through the process of, hey, what am I going to call my remote wellness practice, right? We just discussed this for the first time inside of this training. It wasn't something that we touched on any earlier than this specific training. The chances are that you do not have that domain name yet for your remote wellness practice. And so that means that you're in the perfect situation, you're in the perfect circumstance, and you will be able to go ahead and just use Google domains from the very get-go, following the instructions that we are going to walk you through. Awesome. Now, with that being said, the other topic I want to go ahead and touch on before we get into the step-by-step instructions of how to actually acquire your domain name for your remote wellness practice is really quickly touching on the cost of a domain name. Okay, so in just a moment, we're going to go ahead and walk you through the cheapest and most efficient way to acquire a domain name for your remote wellness practice. Okay, and so in order to register your domain name, in order for you to be able to purchase that address, each registrar is going to have a different cost, but usually it's as cheap as $12 per year, like literally super cheap. Okay, and so the cost is $12 per year to register your domain name through Google Domains. And like I said, it does come with privacy protection built in. That is an add-on feature that other registrars charge additional for, but Google Domains is really awesome about having security and privacy and all that kind of stuff baked in. So it's super cheap. Now, having said that, some students might be thinking, but wait a second, Coach Yasin, you said that we wouldn't have to pay for anything, right? Let me clarify. We said that we were going to help with all of the softwares involved with setting up the entire proven, predictable process, right? We said that we're going to pay for these specific softwares for you for being an active RWA student, right? We talked about the email marketing, SMS marketing, sales funnel, website builder, website hosting, all of these other softwares. I'm not going to go through the entire list because I feel like I've gone through it a gazillion times already, right? All of the softwares that most other online business owners have to pay over $1,000 a month for, we are going to be taking care of for you on your behalf in this very module, okay? And so the reason why these are the specific softwares is because of the fact that we have been able to work with the manufacturers and the developers of these softwares in order for you to be able to go ahead and take care of the bill, to be able to foot the bill for you on your behalf on a monthly basis as an RWA student, okay? But here's the thing. We have not yet been able to create a partnership with the company that is known as Google yet. And probably for good reason. They do over $250 billion a year. They have over 100,000 employees. And so the chances of us being able to have a very close relationship with Google at the size that we are at Remote Wellness Academy, I'm not saying it might not happen, but right now it's not a thing, okay? And so there's simply no way as of right now for us to be able to create a partnership with Google to help take care of your domain registration for you. Of course, the other alternative is that unless you want us to just own your domain name, so, at that point, I don't even know what's the purpose of you having your own remote wellness practice, right? Now, an important note, if you are a student who has decided not to become a remote wellness practitioner because of a $12 a year, $1 per month is too difficult for you to be able to afford right now, then please, I need you to be able to go ahead and email our support team at support@remotewellnessacademy.com, and we will figure something out for you, because quite frankly, this career might not be the best thing for you right now if $1 a month is going to be too difficult for you, okay? You're probably in super scarcity, make money now mode, and you need to go out there and do something else and then continue your education after that, okay? However, for all the other students who are in a position to understand that $12 a year, $1 a month is the investment that is going to allow you to be able to operate your remote wellness practice and the importance of it, then in that case, if you are in that bucket, we're going to go ahead and go over the step-by-step instructions for you to go ahead and pick and acquire your domain name right now. And we're going to go ahead and do that by going over to a quick mini training that is going to go ahead and walk you through the step-by-step instructions of actually registering your domain name. And along with that will come the process of picking your domain name as well. All right, welcome to this quick mini training about the step-by-step of registering and picking your domain name. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Step number 1 is for you to go ahead and go to domains.google.com. Okay, that is going to be the domain, no pun intended there, that you're going to go to in order to start the process of registering your domain. Okay, then what you're going to want to do is you want to go ahead and make sure that you are signed in and logged in as your primary Gmail account, okay? And so what we're talking about here is we're talking about the Gmail account that you want to own the domain name that you are about to purchase, right? So for example, let's say, just as an example, that my personal Gmail account is yasin@gmail.com, okay? That is the main one that I've had for years and years and years and years. That's the main one. That's not my real one, obviously, just an example. But let's say, for example, that's the one that I know that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do now is that is going to be the account that I sign in and purchase my domain that I'm about to purchase right now with. The reason being is that that domain, yasin@gmail.com, is going to be the owner account of the domain that I'm about to purchase. And so with my personal Gmail account, I own hundreds of domains. And the reason why this is important is because sometimes you might have Gmail accounts that are kind of like throwaway accounts, right? I have like a bunch of different throwaway accounts. I have like Yasin, ads@gmail.com, Yasin, whatever. Like I just make a whole bunch throughout the years for whatever purpose, right? I'm not going to want to buy the domain name that I want to purchase as my professional domain with all of those other throwaway accounts. I want to have my main Gmail account, the one that I use pretty much for everything. I want that to be the one that I sign in with. So that way that is the one that actually owns it. Okay. So that way when you purchase the domain name, it's all in one place, organized and attached to your main Gmail account. I know I literally spent like 2 minutes talking about the importance of this, but I cannot tell you this small detail and how many people actually mess this up. Okay, so that's very important. And then obviously when you go over to domains.google.com, obviously they have all the information there if you did want to go ahead and read a little bit more about it. Kind of walks you through everything on there, kind of walks you through, the different extensions and the cost and the pricing if you want to go ahead and do all that. All right, cool. The other quick note that I want to go ahead and point out is that you will also notice you can search for domains and see if they're available here. Yes. And then you can also, this is what I was talking about earlier in the main training, is that you can transfer a domain that you already own. There is a little bit of a process with that. Let's say, for example, you owned it with, GoDaddy or Namecheap, and you're like, you know what? I like Google domains. I want everything in one place. I want it hooked up to my main Gmail account, all that kind of stuff. You can go through the process. I'm not going to have a step-by-step for this. It's easily Googleable and easily YouTubeable. Okay. I don't even know the process off the top of my head. I would just Google it myself. And so if you wanted to go ahead and go down that route, you could do that as well. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and proceed onwards with this training so far. So we're going to go ahead and do is make sure that you are logged in as your primary Gmail account. Okay, that's step number 2 on here. After that, we're then going to go ahead and go to step number 3. Once you actually log in to domain.google.com with your primary Gmail account, you'll see that I am logged in on there. If you have purchased domains from Google Domains in the past, you're going to see that that entire list is here. Okay. Then there's also a transfer button there, billing, all this other kind of stuff. But you want to go over to get a new domain name. And over here is going to be where you go ahead and search for the domain names that you want, but you're going to search for the domain name without the ending. Okay. So let's say, for example, hypothetically, I wanted to purchase, I don't know, let's say my name was John. Okay. Why John? Because John Doe. So John Wellness. Okay. And I'm going to search it without the ending. Now I could search it with .com, but I want to see, if something else is available, right? So I'm going to search it. Yes, it tells me johnwellness.com is already registered. So I'm going to search it without the ending and hit enter. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on all endings. Okay. And so you're going to see on here, it's going to click on all endings and it's going to show me that domain name with all of the different extensions that are available for it, the prices for them if I wanted to purchase that real estate on the internet, and then me being able to go ahead and add this to my cart. Okay. Now, a couple of things in terms of extensions. .com is the recommended but not mandatory extension, okay? There are still massive multi-million-dollar companies that have .net or .co. However, my personal preference is to always try and figure out a domain name that has the .com with it. Now, you might say, but wait a second, Coach Yasin, what if earlier inside of the main training, I decided that my remote wellness practice name was going to be John Wellness, but johnwellness.com is taken? Well, here's the thing. Your domain name does not have to be exactly the same as your remote wellness practice name, okay? Those are two separate things, okay? Is it nice if they're the same? Kind of. Doesn't really matter. But if they are not the same thing, it is not at all a deal breaker, okay? If you decided to go ahead and have, like, let's say, John Wellness, coaching, right? .com. Well, guess what? John Wellness Coaching is available, but my practice name might be John Wellness only. and I just decided to add the word coaching on there, right? Or sometimes, you might want to mess around with it. Sometimes people like to put on like John Wellness Online. I'm not the biggest fan of those kinds of endings, but there are different things that you can mess around with if you don't find the exact name that you are looking for, okay? And so this is the thing that you want to do. Step 4, click all endings, look at all the different endings that are available. Step 5, you want to now brainstorm and search and get creative about the domain name that you want. And this is where you might actually decide to do the process of picking your remote wellness practice name in conjunction with looking at the domain name. Okay, I know this is something that we've used as a strategy in the past as well. We're like, you know what? Even though they don't have to be the same name, we like it and it's nice to be the same name, just our preference. So what we'll sometimes do is we'll sometimes look at the name that we want to have in conjunction with the domain search that we are doing here, right? So we're kind of doing both of those steps and those foundational pieces together. And then maybe if I'm like, yo, you know what? John Wellness was taken. Well, you know what I might do is I might go in and go over to Google, and I might actually go over and see, hey, is John Wellness even a brand? Like, is it dangerous if I go ahead and put John Wellness and then people will think that I'm like a different company, right? You can even click on this, and sometimes you can click on this and find out who owns the domain name. A big warning on this, though, is that most people nowadays do have their privacy enabled on this. So even if you click on find out who owns this domain, sometimes you won't really find all the information around it. So I like to just do a quick, either Google search or just type in this domain name into the URL bar and then just find out, hey, is John Wellness even a thing? If I have a, different version of John Wellness, it's not going to matter. So there is a little bit of an art to this, okay? But then regardless, let's say, for example, you're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and let's see if anybody has Yasin Wellness. I don't know. I doubt it. Yasin's not the most common name. There you go. Look at that. I could become Yasin Wellness. Now, I don't know if somebody wants to take this, Yasin Wellness. If you're like, hey, I'm going to make my remote wellness practice name named after Coach Yasin. Hey, totally up to you. I'm not even going to try to go against it. Okay. Yasin Wellness. Let's say we go with it. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and click add to cart. And then once you click on add to cart, you're then going to go over here to view your cart. Right? And then once you actually click on view your cart, you're going to go ahead and be able to check out. Okay. Now, a couple things on here. Privacy protection. This is the cool thing about Google domains. It's not an additional add-on. It is actually included. You want to go ahead and include this. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's literally very easy to do. So that way your contact information is not going to be public. Remember, your domain is like an address on the internet. And so if you don't have privacy protection on, in the same way that when you have like an address that's a home address, somebody might be able to look up who lives at that address, who owns that real estate property, right? Same way here. It's like if you don't have privacy protection on, which other domain registrars charge extra for, then somebody's going to be able to look up and see, hey, who actually owns this domain name, right? And it's kind of just annoying from a privacy protection standpoint, right? So you can go ahead and read more about that over here if you are curious. And then auto renew, I would highly, highly, highly recommend that you do keep this on, so that way you don't have to remember to renew your domain name, because it would be terrible if you don't have this on and then, it expires and then all of a sudden you got to come in and you'll be like, oh man, I ran my whole business off of it and now I lost my domain name. Yeah, that's kind of bad. So have auto renew on. It's a good thing to have on. And then custom email, you can leave this off for now, because in the main training we are going to be going through the step-by-step different options for this, because there are various different options, $6 per user per month, standard, plus. So you can just have this off for now, and then we're going to walk through exactly how to be able to set this up properly later on inside of the main training. Okay, so it's $12 for the entire year. Super dirt cheap. Literally, I don't think there's anybody who would not be able to afford this. And then you would be able to go ahead and check out, put your credit card information in there. And then the cool thing about this is that is going to then go ahead and show up under My Domains. And then when you actually go over to My Domains, you are going to then be able to change all of the settings in there. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to go ahead and cut over to one of the domain names that we own, so I can actually show you exactly what those settings look like. All right, welcome. So here we go. So this is just nutrifitwellness.com, right? This is a domain that when you go over to your domains, you can see. And then once you actually purchase the domain name, it's going to show, your billing. You're going to have your registration settings, your DNS, your website, your reports, your email. This is going to be where you're going to come in and set up your email forwarding, anything like that, security. All of that is going to have a bunch of settings that are now specific to the domain name that you actually purchased. Okay, so it's like that real estate property that you have on there. So once you actually go through the checkout process, this is what it's going to look like. Now, you don't have to know what any of these settings are. Everything is Googleable and YouTubeable if you ever do need to do anything here, but we are going to have the step-by-step instructions if and whenever there is anything on here. And if you want to learn more, or if you find something that's not in the tutorial, but you got to learn more about it, or you got to do something here, just Google and YouTube it. It's very, very easy to go ahead and do. And so with that being said, that is now the step-by-step instructions of how to actually register and pick your domain name. So make sure you go ahead and follow those instructions. Make sure you do go ahead and acquire your domain name. It is going to be an action step that we are going to hold you accountable to actually getting done by the end of this training. Okay, so make sure that you do go ahead and get that done. And so with that being said, this has been the quick mini training on how to register your domain name. We're going to go ahead and hop back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that quick mini training about the step-by-step instructions for registering your domain name. Like we talked about inside of that mini training, do not overcomplicate this. Do not overthink this. It's very important to make sure that you streamline this process and do not let it stop your momentum. Because on that note, about not having it stop your momentum, I do have two quick warnings, okay? Warning number one, do not be a spoon-fed student, right? What if somebody comes up to us and says, hey, what if I already registered my domain name on GoDaddy, on Namecheap, whatever, right? Well, hopefully you would have waited for the instructions, but I completely understand. You're taking massive action, mistakes happen. It's no problem, okay? Here's the thing. Do not be a remote control student who expects to be spoon-fed and follow blindly, okay? You will need to develop your skill set of resourcefulness while doing this. And so if that means that you've gone ahead and registered your domain name already on a different registrar, then you're going to still be able to go through all of the instructions and the tutorials that we provide. It might just look a little bit different for you. And then guess what? All you got to do is use Google and YouTube in order to be able to figure out what the equivalent of what it is that we are talking about in the tutorial looks like on GoDaddy and Namecheap or whatever service you decided to use instead, okay? That's why if you are able to follow our tutorials, amazing, right? If you already have some other circumstance, then guess what? You're going to have to tap into your resourcefulness because we're not going to go out there and start making tutorials for every single domain registrar and the hundreds of thousands of ones that exist out there, okay? And so here's the thing you have to know. Everything that I or any of the RWA coaches have learned when it comes to domains or really any of the tech stuff is not because we were born knowing any of this. We literally Googled and YouTubed everything that we are teaching you about this right now, okay? And so what that means is that you can also learn it from Google and YouTube, okay? Any question that you have around these topics is easily answerable by Google and YouTube. I promise you, if we figured it out, you can too, okay? So just ask yourself this question. If there is somebody else on the planet who has figured this out, why can't I? There are over 30 million registered business owners in the United States. So that means that 30 million other people figured out how to be able to start a business, okay? How many people have ever bought a domain name? Probably more than that, hundreds of millions of people. So if hundreds of millions of other people have figured this out, why can't you, right? And so I would really urge you to push yourself to really grow and become better throughout this entire process if any part of this seems overwhelming to you, okay? Because I would urge you, if any of this seems like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, I would urge you to go ahead and revisit your Becoming Journal and update your identity to asking yourself the question, okay, in the past I was focusing my Becoming Journal on health. Well, now I'm starting to get into the launch phase. I'm starting to become a remote wellness practitioner. Who do I need to become in this season of my life in order to successfully launch my remote wellness practice? Am I becoming somebody who can effortlessly manage acquiring a domain name, being able to pick a name for my remote wellness practice without overthinking it, without getting in my own way, the same way that millions of other people have done before me? What are the identity statements, the beliefs, and the character traits that other people who have done this before me have? That way I can go ahead and update my current version 1.0 self. And so I urge you, work on yourself, and I promise you, you will be able to get better at these things. Honestly, all of this stuff around tech is just a skill. And just like every other skill, at this point, you probably have it tattooed on the inside of your brain, is that skill equals knowledge times reps. You get the knowledge from these trainings, you get the knowledge from Google, you get the knowledge from YouTube, okay? And then you put in the reps, you put in the action, and then eventually you get the skill. And then one day, you make trainings, okay? Like the one that I am making right now, and then people go ahead and ask you like, wow, he or she is so good with technology. They must have been born being good at this, right? They are so different from me. I don't know how they do it. I don't know why I can't do it, right? No. You just look at them and say, I just acquired the skill, and you can too. And that's why I'm telling you the exact same thing as well. Now, obviously, we are here to help you, right? But here's the thing. We ourselves don't know every single use case. If you ask me how to be able to do half the things on Namecheap or GoDaddy, I have no idea. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and Google and YouTube it. And so I would urge you to make sure that you are being resourceful and explore the answers first before coming to us and just dumping and then expecting us to be able to have all of the answers, when the truth is that for these technical things, yes, I understand specialized knowledge, right? You want to be able to understand from an experience standpoint, hey, what's the best way to be able to structure my offer? What's the best way to structure my remote wellness practice? What is your experience, Coach Yasin? What is your experience, RWA coaches, on my best path going forward? Those are more complex questions that may not be easily answerable on Google and YouTube, right? Those are the things that you're able to go ahead and really lean on us for. But when it comes to these basic things that are super, super easy to Google and YouTube, please don't dump on us. Really just take the time to be resourceful. And then if you really are still struggling, then yes, hey, tap into the mastermind of RWA students that you have. That's why we have a community. That's why we're here as RWA coaches. But please make sure that you are being resourceful first. So that is the first warning that I did want to go ahead and share with you. The second warning is failure uniform incoming when it comes to picking a domain name, okay? This is something that I want to go ahead and emphasize with you again, just like we talked about with the name. This domain name that you pick is something that can easily be changed in the future. Do not wear the failure uniform or be a failure uniform student by stressing out and literally stopping all of your momentum on this. Here's a very funny example that I think is going to really hit this home for you, okay? We all know, or maybe we all know, the car company Nissan, okay? Here's the thing. Nissan is a multi-billion-dollar company that has their domain name on nissanusa.com. And the crazy thing about this, check this out. The person who actually owns Nissan.com, okay, so Nissan is the name of the company. The person who owns Nissan.com, if you go to it, it's actually somebody who's anti-Nissan, like they're trying to sue the company. And so imagine your main brand domain name is owned by somebody who is not even like, the person's name like John Nissan and he's trying to sell his consulting services or something. The person who owns your main brand name is actively trying to go against you and you're a billion-dollar company. Think about that, right? And so that should give you some reassurance that you don't have to have the perfect domain name starting out. It's okay. You're going to be able to iterate. You're going to learn. You yourself are going to figure out what type of domain name you want for yourself in the future. Same thing, Zoom, right? At this point, you're very familiar with Zoom. Zoom started out with the domain name zoom.us because zoom.com was taken. And they did that for 6 years before they actually got to the point where they acquired zoom.com, the domain name. And then even when they acquired the domain name zoom.com, they were like, hey, everybody already knows us by zoom.us. And so they still primarily use zoom.us today. So think about that. Same thing, Tesla, the car company, okay? They started off in 2004 as teslamotors.com, okay? And it took them all the way until 2016 where they were actually able to go ahead and acquire the domain name tesla.com. And there are so many other examples of this that I can go into. It's just laughable, unfortunately, how much those students who wear the failure uniform, right? Those beginner, amateur, newbie students who then cross over the line into becoming students who actually wear the failure uniform, who stress out about this, who overthink this when they don't even have any momentum. And so I would urge you, this is the second warning, do not be like one of those students who really goes ahead and stops their forward momentum because of this fact. And you're going to hear me saying this as if we're kicking a dead horse, okay? As if we're really putting the nail in the coffin. You're going to hear like I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm going to say this over and over and over again because we as human beings need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And this is why it's so important to remember this in the back of your mind as you are going through this process of setting up the foundations for your remote wellness practice. Beautiful. Now, having said that, that brings us to closing out this second foundational piece that we are laying here inside of this training. We've gone ahead and talked about your name. We've now gone ahead and gone through picking and acquiring your domain name. The third foundational piece that we're going to go ahead and talk about next is going ahead and talking about setting up your email, okay? The next piece of the foundations of your remote wellness practice is a professional email, okay? Now, what is the difference between a professional and a personal email? A professional email is one that does not end in things like hotmail.com, gmail.com, yahoo.com, Apple something.com, right? So many other variations, right? All of these are personal accounts, not professional accounts. And so if you look at established businesses, they have their email on their own domain name, okay? So for example, support@remotewellnessacademy.com, right? You'll see that our domain name is actually inside of the email, right? You'll notice that it's not support remote wellness academy at gmail.com, right? That ending after the @ is referring to what domain the email is on, okay? And so in order to actually register an email address on your domain name, the way that we have it here, what you need to do is you actually need to have a professional email provider. Now, again, remember, we're going over foundational knowledge here. The question is, what the heck is a professional email provider? Well, let's go ahead and talk about that right now. A professional email provider is a company that offers the service of connecting your domain to their email services, so that way you can create a professional email like support@remotewellnessacademy.com, okay? And so there are many companies that provide these email services that you can connect your domain to. Now, two of the big players in the space that I think pretty much from a market share standpoint probably have like 60, 70, 80, 90% of the email providers that allow you to be able to connect your professional email. Those are going to be Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 Business, okay? And it does it via Outlook, okay? So example, our domain name, remotewellnessacademy.com, right? That's our domain name. That is connected to the email provider, Google Workspace, okay? So what we're able to do is we're able to go ahead and use Gmail, right? You have your personal Gmail. We're able to use our Gmail, but we're able to use it with a professional domain. So it becomes support@remotewellnessacademy.com. So by using the email provider, Google Workspace, we can use Google's products that would normally only be able to be usable with a personal @gmail.com account, but we can actually use those same products with our own domain name. Now, I might have actually lost some of you there, okay? So let me break this down a little bit more. Okay, Yasin, I'm a little bit confused now. Let me go ahead and explain. So the thing is that companies like Microsoft and Google have many different products that they offer, okay? So typically when you think of like Google, you think of search, right? But Google has many different products. Microsoft, right? You might think of Windows, or you might think of Excel or something, but Microsoft has many different products, okay? And so Microsoft and Google, in their product suite, one of the types of products that they have is a personal email, right? So you can go in and create like a Microsoft email. So it'll be like, Yasin at 365 whatever.com or something. I don't even know what the Microsoft email extension is, but that is something that you can do, and then you'd be using Outlook. I don't know how popular it is on the personal side of things, but I do know that it is a thing, okay? Then you can also set up personal emails on like Yahoo, right? So Yahoo has a service, a product that is a personal email. And then of course, you're probably most familiar with, because you're probably inside of our program, using Gmail, right? That is a Google account. Now, when you create a personal email, if the company has other products, it will give you access to their other products with that personal email, with that personal account that you create, right? So Yahoo, for example, does not have any Office tools. They don't. But Microsoft does. And so when you make a Microsoft personal email, you will then start to get access to their Office tools like Microsoft Excel, Microsoft OneNote, Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. All of those are Office tools that Microsoft makes, okay? Same thing with Google is that if you make a Google account, a Gmail account, they will give you access to all of the other tools that they have, okay? Things like Google Maps, Google Drive, Google Photos, okay? Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, right? Google Translate, Google Search. All of these are different tools that become available to you after you've gone ahead and created a Google account, okay? And then some companies will also have a product inside of their company that is a domain registrar product, okay? Now, in this case, Microsoft, as we're kind of following along on the left side, Microsoft does not have a product that is a domain registrar. They just don't have it, okay? But there's another company like GoDaddy, they have it, but GoDaddy doesn't have personal email. So GoDaddy actually works with Microsoft email on here, right? Because they're trying to figure out how they can offer their customers more products, right? But here's the cool thing about Google. Google, not only do they have a personal email, not only do they have Office tools, but they also have another product called Google Domains, which at this point you're familiar with because that is a domain registrar. So you'll see with a Google account, not only do we get personal email, we also get all of the Office tools on the personal level, but then we can also go ahead and register a domain name with our Google email, okay? And then another product suite that some companies will have is a professional email provider, okay? Now, this is something that Microsoft also has, and it's called Microsoft 365 Business. And so let's say, for example, you purchased your domain name from GoDaddy, and you were like, you know what? I want to go ahead and have a professional email address. I want to have support at remotewellnessacademy.com. I want to have support at johndoewellness.com, right? Whatever it is. Then you get to decide, hey, what kind of professional email service do you want? Do you want to go Microsoft or do you want to go Google? Now, the cool thing about it is that if you go with Google, let's say, for example, you have your personal account with Google, you got the office tools, you're registering your domain name here. It's very easy for you to be able to go ahead and have your domain then hooked up to Google Workspace. In fact, they will do all the work for you and they will literally just connect it. And then here's a cool thing. When you actually have a professional email provider, you then get access to the tools that they usually provide on the personal level. You get the enterprise version of those same tools. And so let me go ahead and clear this so that way we can go ahead and really understand this properly. Is that, let's say, for example, you're following the instructions and you go ahead and register your domain name with Google Domains, okay? Then you go ahead and say, you know what? I want to go ahead and sign up for Google Workspace. Well, Google Domains, because it's all one company, will make it very easy for you to be able to sign up for Google Workspace. And then through support at remotewellnessacademy.com, through support at johndoewellness.com, right? Whatever your email at your professional domain name is, will then also give you access to all of the office tools as well, but on the enterprise professional level. And so that is ultimately one of the coolest things about staying within the Google ecosystem, because they have so many different products, is that you'll notice that Google is one of the few companies that has products and services across all of the above categories. And so this is why we recommend using Google for everything, because it's all connected and it's very easy to use, okay? So that way everything is inside of one ecosystem and everything is inside of the cloud. And so you don't have to deal ever with your computer getting lost or stolen or broken, any of that, because everything is already backed up and accessible from any computer in the world, because everything is on another one of Google's products, which is Google Drive, okay? And so that is one of the cool things about being able to understand how all of this works. This is something that is very technical that a lot of people sometimes don't understand, but remember, it's just a skill. Skill equals knowledge times reps. You're acquiring this knowledge now, maybe for the first time. For some of you, this might be very, very simple, but then as you now get more repetition, you're gonna start to understand. What we're doing is I'm providing you the frameworks, the mental models to be able to understand how technology is structured, so you can understand, oh, wait a second. Okay, I can understand this now. We're like, okay, I might buy my domain name from GoDaddy, but then you know what? I decide I want to connect it to Google Workspace. But that's going to be a little bit more difficult because these are two different companies. You know, they don't really communicate as often, as easily. And so therefore, it's just easier for me to buy my domain name from Google Domains because everything is in one ecosystem. It's just one company, right? But I could go ahead and connect my GoDaddy domain to Google Workspace, or I could connect it to Office 365. In fact, you could actually even buy your domain name from Google Domains if you wanted to, and then connect it to Microsoft 365 Business if you really wanted to, right? So that is also a potential opportunity there. And so each of these is a different suite of products that these companies provide. And that's the cool thing about how these companies are structured and being able to really pick the product suite for your remote wellness practice. And this is really, like I said earlier, the foundational knowledge that you need to know and understand as a online income earner. And that's why as you get more repetition and exposure to this, right? Humans need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. It's going to become more and more simple and easy for you to be able to understand all of this. Now, after going through this foundational knowledge, which again, for some of you is going to be like, come on, Yasin, we understand this, get on with it. Hey, I got to make sure that we're really making sure that everyone understands all of this across the entire student base, okay? We're not just appealing to those people who are like super tech savvy. We want to make sure that all the students are on the same page, okay? The question is, why is having a professional email important in the long run? Well, there's a couple reasons, okay? Number one is that it helps to have a separate email from your personal email, so that way your personal communication and your professional communication is separated. It also helps with allowing for team members and employees, right? It also helps you stay more focused and organized. It's also more simplified and clean. There's just many, many reasons why having a professional email in the long run is definitely worth it, right? And if you think about it, there really can only be one support at gmail.com, right? Because at gmail.com, that's kind of the domain name, right? And so there can only be one support at gmail.com, but there can be unlimited numbers of support at insert domain name here.com, support at remotewellnessacademy.com, support at johndoewellness.com, right? There can be unlimited number of those, okay? And so that's why it's advantageous to go ahead and have a professional email. So that way you can really start to customize how your email looks and the communication and all that kind of stuff, right? But here's the thing, but, three big buts, is that the key here is long term, okay? And so this is where each RWA student is going to have a different need depending on where you are at in your journey, right? We talked about this in the overview of this module, is that different students are going to be coming inside of this module at different paces, right? So we have to start going over the differing options that we can go ahead and explore based off of your need right now as a remote wellness practitioner. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about your options for professional email, because there is no one size fits all answer. Why? Because every RWA student is going to want to move at a different speed. And so some RWA students who are hungry and ready to go are ready to go ahead and start getting full pay students and really want to go ahead and do a real launch for their remote wellness practice. Other RWA students who are more like, hey, I'm in it for the learning right now. I'm taking my time going through this, right? This is not necessarily my biggest priority. I'm doing this on the side. Hey, those students are totally fine as well, right? Everybody is on a different journey. And so this is where the next steps and the options are going to differ based off of what you are looking for. And so there are two main options that you can take at this time in this module for your professional email, depending on the trajectory that you see yourself, okay? Option number one is to go ahead and what we call create a forwarding address to your personal email alias for now, okay? What this is basically when you create an alias to forward emails that are sent to your professional email and you send those over to your personal email. Let me go ahead and give you an example because that seems complicated, right? Is that whenever anybody emails support@yasinwellness.com, right? yasinwellness.com is the domain name that I purchased, right? And I want to go ahead and have it set up so that way whenever anybody emails support@yasinwellness.com, what's going to happen is that those emails are going to be sent to my personal email address, which would be like yasin@gmail.com, right? And then I can just reply to those emails via my personal email address, okay? Now here's the pros of that. This entire forwarding email address setup that we're going to walk you through step by step, if that's the option you decide to take, it's free. It's simple. It literally takes 2 seconds and it's very, very easy to do, okay? The cons of that is that you're still pretty much using your personal email for everything, okay? But that is option number one, especially if you don't want to go down the route of option number two right now. What is option number two? Option number two is where we go ahead and walk you through how to create a separate professional email using your own domain, not an alias, right? Over here, we're using an alias. We're kind of just forwarding emails, right? So it's almost, you only have one email inbox, which is your personal email inbox. And then any email that gets sent to your professional email, it's not like it has its own inbox. It gets sent over to your personal one. That's option number one. But then with option number two, we're actually going to go ahead and create a separate inbox for your professional email on your domain name. So that way you're going to have a complete Google Workspace account. You're going to have all those enterprise, softwares, all that kind of stuff with Google for your remote wellness practice, okay? The pros is that, okay, you have the entire setup right now. The cons is that for Google Workspace, right, in order to have that separate inbox, to have access to all those enterprise softwares that come along with Google Workspace, okay, it does cost $6 per month, okay, and there is a little bit more setup involved with that as well, okay, and so maybe option number two is like, yo, I'm ready to rock and roll here. I'm going to have support tickets coming left and right. I'm going to have a professional business inside of Module 6. I want to expedite this. I'm hungry. I'm chomping. I want to go ahead and do option number two right now. Versus for other students, they're like, hey, I want to go the practice student route. I want to kind of take it a little bit easier. I don't really need to pay $6 a month for what? Because I still need to go through all of phase number two. It's going to take me time. So I'm just going to go the free route right now. And I might as well go ahead and do it that way. And so again, this is going to be a decision that only you can make, and it all depends on your own situation, okay? Because using your personal email is acceptable for now if you plan on just saying, you know what, I'm going to stick to the minimum over here in Module 6, right? I'm going to build my confidence. I'm going to get the recommended 2 to 4 practice students inside of this module, right? I'm able to more than easily manage everything I want from my personal email, especially when you're working with just those practice students. You can manage everything through your personal email without a problem because they're just practice students, right? You're not getting like support tickets. You only have like 2 to 4 practice students. It's not like those students are paying thousands of dollars and they want to have the perfect A to Z experience. They're just practice students, right? And so there would be no reason for that type of RWA student to go out there and set up a professional domain name if they don't want to. If they're like, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and do the whole thing right now. By all means, you can do that as well. So biggest thing here is remember, this module is only going to be providing you the bare minimum foundations for version 1 launch of your remote wellness practice, right? If you need more help in understanding going through all of those other income and business training topics, then yes, it might be better for you to stick with the free route and the simple route for now using your personal email while you still work on completing your studies and your education in phase 2, okay? However, if you feel like the bare minimum foundations from this module will be enough for you to start going out there and getting full pay clients and doing a proper launch, I just said this earlier, I'm just kind of reading this over again to go ahead and really, really make this clear, is that if you feel like you're like, yo, I want to do a proper launch and you know what, everything I learned in phase number 2 and all of that is just going to be additional for me, I'm just going to go ahead and take massive action right now, then for you, going ahead and getting started with option number 2 and the professional email properly from the get-go is probably going to be better. So that way you can just go ahead and start launching and scaling and all that kind of stuff from what you learned in module 6. Okay, so those are the 2 options. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and walk you through the mini training for each of those 2 options. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and first walk through the mini training, the step-by-step instructions for option number 1, which is going to be creating a forwarding address that is going to go to your personal email. So we're still going to use a professional email, right? Your practice students are still going to be able to email support@johndoewellness.com. That's the email that they're going to email, but it's just going to forward to your personal email. And that is actually a free option. And we're going to go ahead and cut over to that quick mini training for that right now. All right, welcome to this quick mini training that's going to be talking to you about how to create a forwarding address to your personal email. So that way you can still use your professional email, but then whenever anybody emails that professional email, it just gets forwarded to your personal email. Okay, so let's go ahead and walk through the step-by-step on how to actually set this up if that is the use case that you will be using it for. Okay, so step number 1 is you're going to go ahead and find your domain name. So you're going to go over to domains.google.com. You're going to make sure that you are signed in with the Gmail account that you actually used to purchase the domain name. And then on the left side, you're going to go ahead, once you actually log in, right? You want to make sure you're logged in with the proper Gmail account. On the left side, you're going to go ahead and go over to My Domains. And then once you click on My Domains, you're going to click on the domain name that you purchased. It's just the example one that I have pulled up, nutrifitwellness.com, okay? Once you actually click on that, and once you actually click on the domain name, it's going to bring you to these settings here. What you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to click on email. Okay, you're going to go ahead and click on email, and then there's going to be this section right here that says email forwarding. All right, what you're going to go ahead and do here is you're going to go ahead and click on add email alias, and then right over here, you're going to go ahead and add the alias email. Okay, alias just means another name for something. Okay, and so right here is where you can go ahead and create. Let's say, for example, you wanted to create help@nutrifitwellness.com. You wanted to create support@yourdomainname.com, right? Whatever your professional email that you want to make is. Our recommendation is to go ahead and make support@yourdomainname.com. That has always been the first one that we've always created. It's always been the foundational one. And then once you actually set it up with your individual inbox, because right now, obviously the reason why you're doing option number 1 is because you want to have the free option, the easy option, the simple option right now, because it's not that important for you to get the individual inbox. Later on, when you do get the individual inbox, you can always change this. You can always adapt this. You can always have more aliases for this one. It doesn't really matter. So I would say just start off with support, and then that'll be support@nutrifitwellness.com or support at, your domain name. So you don't have to enter in the domain name because it's automatically recognizing that you're creating an alias underneath that domain name right now. And then over here, you're going to go ahead and put in the recipient email address. So whenever anybody emails support@nutrifitwellness.com, where do I want that email to go? And this is typically going to be your personal inbox, or if you decided that you wanted to create a different email, like you wanted to do an @Gmail or whatever, totally up to you the way you want to do it. The way that I would probably do it is keep it simple and send it over to my personal, and then I have a filter in there that'll kind of separate those emails, right? So obviously all this is easily Googleable. It's easily YouTubeable. It's very, very easy for you to learn. If you want to set up a filter inside of Gmail, all of these other things, it's very easy for you to be able to learn, right? So add an existing recipient email. We're sticking with the theme of John here. So let's say John john@gmail.com, right? So that's, let's say, for example, the personal email that John wants to go ahead and have his professional email forward to. And then that's all you got to do. All you got to do is you go ahead and click on add. And then once you actually go ahead and click on add, and then that's it. Now what's going to happen is that whenever anybody emails support@nutrifitwellness.com, it's going to be sent over to john@gmail.com. However, there is one very important last step. Once you go ahead and click on add, if you are actually going ahead and setting up a existing recipient email that is not the same as the email that you are logged in as, right? So let's say, for example, right now I'm logged in as, Yasin@gmail.com, but I want my existing recipient email to be sent to Yasin15@gmail.com. Because these are not the same emails, it's going to actually ask me to verify. Okay, so let me go ahead and give you an example here, right? So obviously my main email here is not john@gmail.com. So when I click on add, you're going to see that in just a second, it's going to tell me that I have to go ahead and do an extra step in order to verify this. Okay, so boom, just like that. You'll see here, this email won't work unless it's verified. So now I got to go over to john@gmail.com. Okay, I got to go over to john@gmail.com, and I have to click inside of that email. There's a link, a button, in order to verify this. So that way, once it's actually verified, whenever anybody emails support@nutrifitwellness.com, it will then actually forward to john@gmail.com. It will not work unless you've actually gone through the verification process. However, there is no verification, from what I remember, if you are actually signed in. So if you are signed into the same Gmail account and you want to have the same Gmail forwarding here, then it may not ask you to verify, but just make sure that you go through these final steps to make sure that everything is saved properly, okay? And then boom, step number 5, you are done. Now, the question that you might have after going through these steps is, okay, I understand this, Coach Yasin, but how do I do this on insert GoDaddy.com, Namecheap.com? How do I do this on, whatever, right? Here's the thing. Please be resourceful. We are not going to be able to make tutorials on every single domain registrar that's out there, okay? This is why we urge Remote Wellness Academy students to try and get to the point where they're purchasing their domain name through the tutorials that we recommend, because all the tutorials are made for the same resources, okay? But if it's for a different registrar that you're using, please be resourceful, okay? Pretty much all of the main domain registrars have this feature. And so if you are struggling with the identity and the character traits of becoming a resourceful person, and you don't know exactly how to follow instructions and directions, or learn something off of Google, then please work on your becoming journal so you can go ahead and identify that. Because the truth is that the answer that you are looking for is just a short Google search away. You can see here, GoDaddy add forwarding email to domain. That's literally what I Googled, and literally set up my forwarding email address, GoDaddy. It's in massive right there on Google. And there's like a gazillion different articles underneath it as well, okay? And literally just from a Google. Now, if you were like, you know what? I can't follow instructions because I don't like to read. I don't like to look at the images. I want to look at YouTube videos instead. Okay, go to YouTube, type in the same exact thing, and I promise you somebody has made a much better tutorial than the one that we have made here in Remote Wellness Academy when it comes to these tech things, okay? The complex questions, the coaching things, the income, the business, the remote wellness questions, all of those things, we understand. We are your resource for that. But these tech things, there are people who are much more tech savvy than we are, who have made much better tutorials than we have, okay? And so I would urge you to be resourceful so that way you can actually go ahead and be successful with all of these tech things as you acquire these skills, okay? So that has been the step-by-step tutorial and the quick mini training on how to create the forwarding address to your personal email alias, and that is the option for your professional email. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and hop back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that quick mini training on the step-by-step instructions of creating your forwarding address to your personal email. Again, remember, we did go through the use case scenarios for that. If that is the option that you choose to go, make sure you follow those instructions and be sure that you are successful with that. What we're now going to go ahead and do is we're now going to go ahead and cut over to a quick mini training that is going to go ahead and walk you through option number 2 if you decide that you want to go ahead and create a separate professional email inbox using your domain name, and you understand that there is a small cost to that that's going over to Google, okay? That's not something that we're making money off of for whatever reason. If any other student thinks that we're trying to make money off you guys for $6 a month, that's going to Google, okay? And so if that is the option that you decide that you want to go ahead and go forward with, then we're going to go ahead and cut over to the quick mini training that is going to walk you through that right now. All right, welcome to this quick mini training about how to create a separate professional email inbox using your domain. This is option number 2. We've gone through why you might use this option, the costs involved with that, all of that kind of stuff. We're not going to go through that here. We're just going to go ahead and talk to you about the step-by-step instructions for this. Okay, so if you decide to go down this option, what you're going to be doing is that step number 1, you are going to go to workspace.google.com. Okay, Workspace is one of the products that Google offers that is specifically for email providers. We talked about this already. Okay, this is what the website is going to look like. All right, once you actually get here, if you decide you want to explore, you want to learn a little bit more because you are an online income earner, you say, you know what, I want to learn exactly what's going on here. They have some FAQs, they got view more FAQs. You see, they've made it very, very easy and simple for those who have an open mind and actually want to learn this stuff. Okay, once you actually get here, what you're going to go ahead and do, they've made it very simple because it's all just one company, especially if you're using Google domains. You just go ahead and click on Get Started. Boom. You just go ahead and click on that. Once you click on that, it's going to go ahead and open up to this specific page, right? As of the recording of this, sometimes they change it. Sometimes it looks different. Remember, everything is Googleable and YouTubeable. Okay. So for the sake of this example, we're going to say, cool, John Doe, my current email. Now, here's the thing. My name is... and then my current email is your current main personal email. Okay, this is kind of like the backup email on there. So in the case of John, let's just say he's going to be john@gmail.com. Okay, enter. Then this Google Workspace is going to be used by, for right now, it's probably just going to be you because this is going to charge you based off of how many licenses you have. So just me. Okay. And then I'm going to set up this workspace with either an existing domain or get a new domain. Okay, so getting a new domain, this is going to take you over to domains.google.com if you wanted to purchase a domain. At this point, you probably don't need to do that. So you're going to click on existing domain because you've already purchased your domain from Google Domains previously. So then you go ahead and click on select there. If you click on details, you'll be able to see this as well. You click select. And then from here, it's going to ask me to go ahead and put in my domain name. So let's say, for example, I had purchased johnwellness.com, right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in this specific domain that I had purchased for my wellness practice, if that was the one that I had purchased in the previous steps. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on continue. And then it says continue with You're going to use this, the accounts you log in with for Gmail, Docs, Drive, Calendar, and more, right? So this is what we were talking about. All of these are going to be the enterprise versions of Google Workspace. So you have access to Gmail and Docs and Drive and Calendar, but those are all the personal versions, right? That you access with your @Gmail account, right? But this is now, hey, it's going to be support@johnwellness.com. That's going to be the email, right? So yes, that's the domain I want to use. I'm going to click on continue. And then it's going to go ahead and walk me through, hey, what is the username that you want to have for this specific domain? Now, this is where you're going to create your professional email. So here I'm going to go ahead and I want to do support@johnwellness.com. Okay. So let's say, for example, that's the username that I'm going to go ahead and create. Now, a lot of people like to do, hey, I'm going to be john@johnwellness.com. The first email that we've always created that makes it easy, so that way you only have to deal with one for a very long time, is just support@johnwellness.com. That's the main one. Okay. That right there is the email that you're going to be using. That's going to be the professional email that you have registered. You're then going to go ahead and create a password for yourself. You're going to verify that you are not a robot, which hopefully you're not. You might be a robot. It's completely fine if you are. No discrimination. But anyways, so you're going to verify that you're not a robot. Educate your users. You can go ahead and leave this off. You don't have to click on anything there. And then once you actually go through this entire process, let's say, for example, we go ahead and create a password, just whatever. I'm not a robot. Yes, thank you very much. And then you go ahead and create account and continue to check out. Okay, so if we go ahead and click on this, you will see that it's going to go ahead and create the account. And then it's going to go ahead and ask us to check out. Now, this is very important. Okay, you'll see on here that it's trying to get you on business standard. Business standard is the third tier. They actually have like a starter, a standard, and then they have like some professional or something, right? So this one is $6, this one is $12, and this one is, I don't remember off the top of my head, it might be like $18 or $20 a month, okay? You do not need this plan here. But they want to try to get you on this plan because you might not know any better, okay? And so what's going to happen is they're going to get you on this plan for 14 days at no charge. And then what you're going to do is you want to make sure that you log into the settings and downgrade before your 14 days are up. Otherwise, you're going to start getting charged $12 a month, which is no need for you to pay $12 a month, okay? And so if you need help learning how to be able to downgrade, just go to Google, just go to YouTube and type into the search box, how to downgrade Google Workspace account. I promise you, you're going to be able to find it it over there. Because I myself don't even know where to click and do all that kind of stuff. I'm probably just going to go to Google and YouTube if you ask me. And so that is going to be the place that you need to go in order to find the answer, which is Google and YouTube. Next up, after that, cool, these guys are trying to upsell us. It's okay. Business. We go from there. Awesome. We're now going to go ahead and review and check out. Okay. So it's going to go ahead and say, hey, we're trying to go ahead and get you on the $12 a month plan. This is the account type business. You're going to go ahead and enter in all of your information, and then you're going to go ahead and check out. Now, after you actually go ahead and check out, I'm not going to actually be able to go through this because I don't want to have to purchase this email, johndoe@johnwellness.com. However, what's going to happen is that after you get through this entire page here, what's going to happen is you're going to check out. And then on the next page, if you have your domain through Google Domains, it'll be as simple as a one click for you to go ahead and integrate your Google Workspace and connect that with your Google domains. And again, if you have difficulty with it or if you run into any issues, number one thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and Google it and you want to go ahead and YouTube it. And then if you're really struggling, mastermind with RWA students, as well as then you can ask the coaches, right? Don't let this be something that you get stuck on because you're like, oh, Coach Yasin said I got to be resourceful and now it's been 3 weeks and I just never got past this step. No. Make sure that if you get to that point, you're like, yo, this is really frustrating for me. I need some help. Sure, no problem. Reach out to us. But do not reach out to us if you have not tried being resourceful first, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and check out with this. It's going to be a one-click integration with your Google domains, and then you're going to be rocking and rolling. Now, a question that you might have is how come we did not actually go in and upgrade our email directly from Google domains? Yes, that is also an option. The reason we didn't do that is because I have found that when you actually go through Google Workspace and go through this entire option, it allows you to be able to access your admin portal directly from the email rather than you having to access your admin portal from your personal Gmail. If none of what I just said made any sense to you, do not worry about it. Let that go over your head. Let that go through one ear and out the other. Do not worry about it. Just follow the instructions that we're saying. But from our experience, what we found is that going through the Google Workspace route is a little bit better than doing it from Google Domains, okay? Now, you're free to welcome to go ahead and do it whatever way you want to do it. That's just the way that we are recommending it, okay? Now, having said that, this is another piece that I'm recommending here. I'm going to say this a gazillion times. Please be resourceful. Flex your resourcefulness muscle. If you literally YouTube how to sign up for Google Workspace, you're going to see there are videos from Google themselves. There are all of these fancy schmancy. These people are so much better at making tech tutorials than we are. These are literally the same videos that I watched prior to me having to make these tech trainings because I myself am not a tech wizard. I wasn't born knowing a lot of this stuff. This is not advanced knowledge that you got to be able to know this stuff in order to be able to be successful in life. This stuff changes regularly. Every 6 months when I go in and I got to be able to help somebody with this, it changes all the time. I myself am not up to date with this, okay? And so you want to make sure that if you need help with the tech stuff, go over to YouTube, push yourself, because if somebody else has figured this out on the planet, I guarantee you that you can figure it out as well, okay? And so that is the tech tutorial and the step-by-step and the foundations for being able to go ahead and get your professional email inbox set up. Go ahead and make sure that if that is the route that you are doing, make sure you get everything rocking and rolling. So that way you are held accountable to that by the end of the training. And so with that being said, this was the step-by-step instructions for option number 2. We're going to hop back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that quick mini training that was all about the step-by-step for option number 2, which was all about creating that professional email inbox that is not an alias, it's a legit email professional inbox for your domain, okay? Now, having said that, make sure that you go ahead and stick to either one of those options and let us know if you have any questions. But the common question that also does come up when we talk about setting up a new email address is that if you decided to go with option number 2, right? If you decide that you're going to go ahead and create a completely different email inbox, right? You have now a completely different professional email address. The question that often comes up is, okay, well, do I now need to go ahead and transfer everything over to this new email, right? I've gone ahead and started downloading these Google Docs and I made all this Becoming Journal and all the stuff that I was doing inside of the RWA program. Do I need to go in now and spend a bunch of hours figuring out how to be able to transfer this over to the other Google Drive and the other email address? The answer to that question is nope. This is another thing that I can't tell you how many beginners, newbies, and amateurs overcomplicate. And unfortunately, I'm sad to say that unfortunately, a lot of people do step over the line and become students who wear the failure uniform and super overcomplicate this, is because here's the thing. If you still have files in your personal Gmail, in your personal Google Drive, you can leave them there, right? But then you might say, but what about all the RWA files, right? Those Google Drive documents that we created. Remember that whole folder? We had that entire tutorial that walked you through the remote wellness practice and then renaming the folder and then all the folders within it, right? What do we do with that? Here's the thing. It's not a big deal if that is in your personal main Gmail. Do not major in the minors, okay? For right now, what you can do is you can just go over to that Google Drive folder where you have all of your coaching call scripts and, all the kind of stuff that you've been building and your Google Slides and all that kind of stuff. And you just go over to that folder in your Google Drive and you right click on it, okay? And then what you do is you go over to share. And then once you go over to share, all you got to do is you just go in and you just share that folder with your new Google Drive account. It's as simple as that, okay? And so you don't want to overcomplicate this. You want to make this as simple as possible. All you do is you take those folders that you had created with your personal Gmail, and now they're in both places, right? They're in your professional email, and you just share those with your personal email. It's as simple as that. Now, is this the most organized, schmancy way to do this? Probably not, right? Is this the best way once you actually get a team and you start building your team and now you have 2 employees and 3 employees and 4 people that work with you and all that kind of stuff? Flat out, no. But right now, does that matter? Is that the main thing? Because here's the thing. We ran with this structure of literally having everything in my personal Google Drive and then just sharing it with the professional email. We ran with that structure until we were doing well over $100,000 a month. And then once we hit a point where we're like, man, we have 5, 10, 15, 20 team members. We got to redo our entire company infrastructure. Then, hey, we did it at that time, right? And so it's normal and is required for you to redo your company infrastructure at each new level of income. Even the structure that we have right now doing $3 million plus is not the same structure that we're going to have when we do $10 million, when we do $15 million, right? It always has to be changed. This is the way that things evolve, adapt, and change. But the one thing that you need to make sure that you are doing at every single level of income is keeping the main thing. And remember, the level of income that you are at right now, most likely, your main thing is to have momentum, traction, and keep on taking action. It's not about trying to have all of the admin, all the bells and whistles and everything organized the way that the most effective and efficient way possible. Just take the action, do whatever it is required to be able to keep in momentum, and then you can always figure out and change things in the future when things actually get traction. So just some very important notes as we kind of go through this process. But ultimately, really, as we are going through this training, that really is the third foundational piece that we wanted to go ahead and put together here inside of this training. And like I said, we are going to be holding you accountable to this, but really it's all about setting up your professional email based on the domain that you acquired earlier. Okay, now the fourth foundational piece that we're going to go ahead and walk through right now is the logo for your remote wellness practice. Okay, this is another important piece because it's going to help kind of as you're putting branding together, as you're kind of putting your invoices together. It's just a small nice to have thing. Okay, it's not at all required. It's just something that is nice to have. Now, it's nice to have when it only takes you a couple minutes to put together. It's not nice to have if you spend the next 3 months and hiring a bunch of designers and spending a bunch of money trying to create your logo, okay? And so once again, this is another element that most beginners, newbies, and amateurs stress so much about. And here's the thing, every single logo that we have created for our business in the last half decade that has done over $1 million, okay, has always been created by ourselves in a free software that we're going to walk you through called Canva, okay? Every single time that we obsessed over the logo and we had it professionally made and, we hired a designer and all this kind of stuff, in the last 5 years, all of those companies, for us at least, have always flopped. And so our recommendation is to not spend more than a few minutes creating your logo yourself using the free software called Canva that we're going to go ahead and walk you through in just a moment. And so you're going to see the theme here, right? We are sticking to minimum viable product, minimum viable marketing philosophy, and keeping the main thing and not majoring in the minors, okay? That forward progress is what is going to allow you to be able to get set up for success so that way you can actually steer the car as it is moving, okay? Ultimately, if I was to go ahead and summarize the biggest mistake that beginners and amateurs make when they are getting started is that they are all worried about all these other things when their car is not yet even moving. That is, I think, the best metaphor that I can go ahead and describe to you on the biggest mistake that you might run into or some of your other peers in this program might run into. And that's why we are hammering it over and over and over again. So that way it is 1000% clear. Get the dang car moving. And then after that, you're in a much better position to go ahead and steer based off where it is that you want to go. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the step-by-step instructions of how to actually create your logo for your remote wellness practice. And so what we're going to do, as always, as we've been doing inside of this training, is we're going to go ahead and skip over to a quick mini training that's going to walk you through the step-by-step instructions to go ahead and create your logo without overcomplicating it and without overthinking it. So let's go ahead and cut over to that quick mini training now. All right, welcome to this quick mini training about the step-by-step instructions for creating and designing your logo without overcomplicating it. So step number one, what you're going to go ahead and do is you are going to go over to canva.com. That's canva.com. It is a free, if you want to upgrade, we have personally upgraded, but you don't have to upgrade. It's absolutely free if you want to go ahead and use it free. You're going to go ahead and go over to this website and you are going to go ahead and sign up and create a free Canva account. Now, if you already have an existing Canva account, then you can go ahead and use that one also. Now, a quick question that does sometimes come up at this point, because you have now been working on setting up your professional email and all this kind of stuff, is, hey, do I have to make sure that I create this Canva account with my business email, right? My professional email that I went through this entire process of setting up? The answer is no. You're overcomplicating it. It doesn't matter what email you create this account with. Okay, it does not have to be your professional or your business email. Okay, our own Canva account was under my personal email even when we had 10 plus team members using it, and then we finally changed it after that. So it does not matter right now what email you use to sign up for the Canva account. Remember, keep the main thing the main thing. You can always come in and change it later super easily. Don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Just make the dang Canva account. Very, very straightforward. And again, I know sometimes I am being a lot more direct with this, but I really am trying to address a lot of the concerns that some students have. It might not be you, because not all students are like you, who are like, hey, I understand this. This is awesome, right? Like, Yasin, you don't have to talk to us like that. But the truth is that I'm talking this way so we can really start to address the concerns that the truth is that some students do have when they get to these points where they really want to overcomplicate things, okay? So that's why I do sometimes have the tone that I have to be able to really, really, really help break those beliefs and really help you be able to move forward if you are a student that struggles with that, okay? Then once you've actually gone ahead and created your free Canva account, what you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to go ahead and use the link either in the action steps or in the actual guide for this specific training, in which we have actually gone ahead and created for you a template for your logo. This is a part of the RWA over delivery promise. We're doing our best to make sure that there's no stone left unturned. We're not just saying, hey, go to Canva and then all of a sudden, go ahead and make your own logo. We're making this as easy and as simple as possible for you. And so once you log in, this is what it's going to actually look like. And then you're going to go ahead and click on the actual link for the template that is there. Once you click on the link for the template, it is going to take you over to a page that looks like this, okay? A template created by Remote Wellness Academy was shared with you, okay? You're going to go ahead and click on Use Template, okay? And then once you actually click on Use Template, you'll see that it's actually asking me to go ahead and sign in again. If that's the case, let me go ahead and refresh and see if it works now. Use Template. There we go. Awesome. So you'll see that it went ahead and allowed me to do that. Open the design in the Canva app. This is because I have the Canva app downloaded on my computer. I'm going to click on No Thanks because I want to do this inside of the actual web browser. And then from there, because I actually want to do this inside of the web browser, obviously there's a tour and everything. I'm going to skip the tour, and then I'm going to go ahead and collapse this. And I can also go ahead and expand this if I wanted to as well, right? And so what I'm going to go ahead and do now is you'll notice that inside of the template, there's various different kind of logo designs that we've included for you, right? So this is like Elite Wellness Coaching. There's a black background with white, and there's a white background with black, and then there's like the EWC, and then, different variations of this. Now, this is going to be up to you and your creativity. Again, do not spend the next 2 months and hiring designers and doing all this stuff. You can do it yourself, and it's very simple for you to do yourself as well. All you do is you can just go ahead and click on these texts right here, and you can mess around with things like the font style, the text size. You can rearrange things. You can get inspiration from templates as well. Let me show you what this might look like, right? So if I double click on this, and then I go ahead and let me expand this so you can start to see what it might look like here, is over here, if I click here, I can literally search like handwriting, and it'll bring up all of the different fonts that look like handwriting. I can search up like calligraphy, right? I can search up so many different themes, and it'll bring up a gazillion different fonts. This is the beautiful thing and the amazing thing about Canva. Then here's the other cool thing. If I go ahead and click on templates right here, okay? If I go ahead and click on templates, and then right here, I go ahead and type in, let's say like logos, right? If I type in logos, you will see that it goes ahead and brings up a whole bunch of different logos that I can get inspiration from. And then the cool thing is, let's say, for example, I want to use, oh, here we go, fresh juice mangoes. And then once I've gone ahead and clicked on it, I got to be careful because if I click on it now, it might actually override what I have here. Let me just check. Oh, right here, right? So it says here, add template as a new page. I'm not going to click don't show me this again because I like to see these. I'm going to click add as a new page. And then boom, just like that. Guess what? I got my logo on here. And if I want to be fresh juice mangoes, okay, cool, mangoes. And I want to go ahead and have, EWC mangoes, I don't know, and then I might resize this here. And again, there are a gazillion and 2 tutorials on the YouTubes and on the Googles all about how to use Canva. Okay, I myself am learning every single day. I might go ahead and click on the color palette here, click on this. I might make it bold, might make it different, not bold. I might decide to add an effect to it. I might decide, maybe make it a little bit, oh, there we go. That's nice. I might add some transparency. Okay, cool. You know what? I want to change the color of this effect. I might come over here, select a color. I want it to be exactly this green color. There we go. Look at that. Fresh juice mangoes. Ready to launch, okay? And then there's a whole bunch of other templates. If I go back here, right now, you're going to notice that if you don't have a pro account, you will not be able to import the different logos that have this crown icon on them. Again, it doesn't really matter because there's literally millions of free ones, okay? So you do not have to be subscribed to the pro Canva if you don't want to be. And if there's a really good pro one and you want to just look at that for inspiration and then recreate it yourself on the right side, if you don't want to pay for it right now because you decide, right now it doesn't make sense for me because I don't have momentum or cash flow coming into the business, so be it. But there's a gazillion and 2 things that you can do to really start customizing these logos in the way that you want. And you do not have to hire somebody in order to do it. And you can literally make it as simple as possible. It does not matter. We've gone ahead and given you the template that you can literally work off of and just use the template if you want for now. And so if we go back to the instructions now that I went ahead and talked to you through this, is that you can go in and create multiple variations of this if you would like as well. So if I go ahead and click on this duplicate page, right? Let's say, for example, I like this template, but I want to go ahead and tweak it a little bit. So then I can go ahead and duplicate page. And then I can say, you know what? I want to mess with this and I want to make maybe, make the letter spacing a little bit tighter. I want to make this font a little bit bigger, right? I can literally just mess with it and see, okay, let me see if I like this one or I like this one better. You can really just play around with the font, get creative with it. But remember, do not spend more than like an hour on this, okay? Once you actually have a couple different variations you like, okay, you can have one on the black background. You can literally select all of this and I can duplicate this and I can select this if I want. I can, change the background color to green if I want. Once I have a couple that I like, what you can then do is you can go ahead and export this and save this in your Google Drive. Let me walk you through what that's going to look like, okay? What I would do is I could go ahead and click on share. Once I click on share, I would go overhead and come to download. And then once I get to download over here, I can go ahead and download this and have different file formats, JPEG, PNG, that kind of stuff. Now you would need to upgrade if you wanted to have like a transparent background or anything like that. But typically a black background or a white background is going to be more than enough for you because most of the places that you're going to upload the background is going to be white anyway. So you don't really need a transparent background, okay? And then once you actually export this and download this, okay, you just click on download. You can then go ahead and download it either to your local desktop on your computer, or you could even download it directly into Google Drive if you actually know how to set up what's called the Google Drive desktop app, okay? If you don't know how to set that up, what it basically does is it mirrors all of the files that you have in your Google Drive. It creates a mirror of that on your computer. So that way, all of the files that are in the browser in the cloud look and feel like real local files on your computer, but they don't take up any space. And so that way it's easy for you to be able to put in and download things directly from the internet directly into Google Drive. So for example, if I go over here and I click on share and then I click on download, okay? If I do not have the Google Drive desktop app installed on my computer, then I'm only going to be able to download this maybe into my documents, into my downloads, into my local folders. But if I have the Google Drive desktop app on my computer and set up, then guess what? I can actually go in and download this directly into the Google Drive folder that's on my computer because of that app. Now you might ask the question, well, Coach Yasin, that sounds really awesome. I want to be able to learn how to do that. I want to be able to download these logos that I've created and I want to go in and put them under 0, your company name, 0 company operations, and then you can make a folder called logos and then download these directly into that folder. Well, how the heck am I going to do that? Well, guess what? You go over to YouTube and you type in how to use Google Drive desktop app or how to use Google Drive desktop. And there are so many awesome videos that have been viewed by hundreds of thousands and millions of people that will walk you through step by step with interactive animations, and these people do it professionally with all these tech tutorials that will walk you through it on how to actually set it up and even give you a better explanation of what the heck the Google Drive desktop app is, better than I would be able to do it, okay? And so that is if you want to go ahead and take the initiative and really learn how to be able to set that up as an online income earner. I would urge you to go ahead and take that step and be able to educate yourself on that, okay? But if you decided you didn't want to do that, no problem. You can just go ahead and download this directly over to your computer. And then guess what? Step number 6, you can go ahead and now use your logo wherever you have the exported file and upload it to wherever you want, right? So later on, when you get those softwares that we're going to walk you through that we're going to take care of on your behalf, if you want to upload your logo on there, you can do so because you have the actual downloaded file. And then all of these are backed up for you inside of your Canva account. And so if you ever lose that file on your computer, you can just come back over to Canva and then download them again if you really wanted to scale Fresh Juice Mango's EWC to the next level. And so that is how you would go ahead and utilize the free software Canva in order to go ahead and create your logo step by step. Again, make sure you do not overcomplicate this. Do not spend a gazillion hours on this. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. We've given you the template. All you got to do is tweak it, change the fonts around, change the colors around if you want, make a few different variations, and you are good to go. Remember, this is stuff that can always be changed in the future. Okay, so just another quick reminder, please be resourceful. If you literally Google how to create a logo in Canva, I want to make sure I mention this. This is very important. If you Google how to create a logo in Canva, literally the very first thing, Logo Maker, create free logos in minutes using Canva. It's like an official Canva link. And then there's a gazillion YouTube videos on there as well, okay? And so there's a lot of resources if you so choose to use them and be open-minded to actually using them as well. And so this has been the tutorial on how to actually create your logo step by step. With that being said, let's go ahead and hop back over to the main training. All right, welcome back from that quick mini training about the step-by-step instructions of creating your logo for your remote wellness practice without overcomplicating it and without overthinking it, okay? And so with that being said, and now that you've gone ahead and done that, we really have now gone ahead and put together the foundations of your version 1.0 launch for your remote wellness practice, the name, the domain, the email, and the logo, right? And so as you're starting to see, we are starting off this module with a bang. We wanted to go ahead and make sure that we are starting off with the tactical because like we talked about, this module is going to primarily be tactical. And so just like all of the other previous trainings that you have gone through inside of this program, our ultimate goal inside of the Remote Wellness Academy, in order to create the most results education program on the planet, is to not leave any stone unturned. It doesn't matter if you're 16 years old or if you're 90 years old. It doesn't matter what tech level you're at. It doesn't matter if you type 1 word per minute. None of that matters. We have gone out of our way to make sure that this is as easy as possible for you. We want to make sure that every single RWA student has the opportunity to get the results that they are looking for from this program. That it is not something that, we didn't talk about that topic. We left this on the table. We didn't turn this stone over. We are going into all of the details. So that way, everything is on your plate to make sure that you are taking the action necessary for you to be able to get the results that you want in your life. And so our goal is to always consistently over-deliver in whatever way we possibly can. Remember the RWA over-delivery promise, the amount of value that you thought you'd get compared to the amount of value that you actually got. The value that you get from the Remote Wellness Academy will always far exceed your investment ROI. Holy over-delivery Batman RWA is amazing. Love it. Let's go ahead and close out this training now and talk about your engagement question for this specific training. So number 1, hey, what are your thoughts on this training so far? I know we went ahead and talked a lot about tactical things. What were your thoughts on what it is that we talked about? What takeaways, insights, or ahas did you have while going through this training? And then number 3, this is an important one that we're going to really start to ask you consistently inside of this module is, hey, do you have any questions about anything that was discussed in the training? The reason why this is going to be a very important question for you to go ahead and give us feedback on is because now that we're getting more tactical, more of your students' use case cases may be different. And so you want to go ahead and let us know if you do have any questions. Go ahead and let us know inside of the student community post for this specific training. And then just a reminder in terms of asking questions, if you do have general questions, not about a specific training, you can go ahead and create a post in the student community, right? You can create a new post there. If you have questions about a specific training, right? Like for example, in this training, you're like, hey, Coach Yasin, hey, RWA coaches, I got a question about domain. I got a question about name, right? Number one thing you want to do, first check the rest of the comments on that specific student community training post to see if a student has already asked a similar question. If not, make sure you go ahead and ask your question in the comments of that student community post. And then number 3, make sure that in your comment, you do tag the RWA coaches so that way we do get a notification. However, if after 12, 24, 48 hours, even then, we might still miss your question because sometimes Facebook is iffy on the notification. So we don't want to miss your questions. We want to make sure that we answer every single one of your questions, that you get the support that you need and that you are looking for. And so if you ask a question and you don't get the answer that you are looking for, make sure that you go ahead and reach out to us via support. How? What you do is you go ahead and reach out to RWA support using the chat icon at the bottom right of your classroom, or you can go ahead and shoot us an email at support@remotewellnessacademy.com, letting us know that, hey, I commented with a question on, XYZ post. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get a coach to jump in and get that question answered for you. So again, let us know if you do have any questions, and then just let us know on that specific student community post, okay? With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about your action steps for this specific training. Of course, action step number 1, make sure that you go ahead and watch and study this training in full. Action step number 2 is to make sure you go ahead and complete the engagement questions for this training, the ones that we went ahead and talked about above, okay? Number 3, you're gonna go ahead and pick a name for your remote wellness practice. You're gonna go ahead and follow the step-by-step instructions and the approaches that we talk about, okay? Number 4, you're going to go ahead and acquire the domain name for your remote wellness practice, again, following the step-by-step instructions from the training and acquiring the domain name that you want. Step number 5, action step number 5 is going to be setting up your email. So deciding what option you want to proceed with based on your situation and getting that set up. And then decide what email option you want to proceed with based on your situation, okay? And then go ahead and get that set up. And then action step number 6 is going to be for you to go ahead and create your logo in Canva using the Canva template that we provide for you, or you can go ahead and create your own. Canva has a gazillion other logo templates as well. It doesn't matter how you do it, just make sure that you go ahead and get it done. And then action step number 7 is that you're going to go ahead and comment on the same student community post, just a new comment, okay? And you're gonna go ahead and let us know, once you actually complete the above action steps, you're gonna let us know, number 1, what name did you pick for your remote wellness practice, okay? You're gonna go ahead and put the actual name in the comment. Number 2, what domain did you acquire for your remote wellness practice? Okay, you're gonna go ahead and put the entire domain in the comment. Number 3, what email option did you go with, okay? As well as, it's not on here, but also go ahead and let us know what is the email, the professional email that you set up, right? Did you decide to go the forwarding email route or the individual email inbox route? And then did you set up support? Did you set up help? Did you set up contact? What did you set up? And then number 4, attach a screenshot or export from Canva a picture of your domain name and actually attach it and put it inside of the comment, inside of the student community post comment that you're going to go ahead and create for this training. Okay, so those are the 7 action steps that you want to go ahead and complete for this specific training. Like I said, tactical. I'm super excited for you to continue this journey, really get those foundations for your remote wellness practice launched, and then get through the rest of Module 6. This is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.